Lest we forget, the remnant is only available to those who have the book and the DVD, The Concealed Mystery of Iniquity. To get the remnant, you must have the book and the DVD called The Concealed Mystery of Iniquity.
There is no doubt that China is emerging as a regional powerhouse. In the past 30 years, its GDP has grown from just $177 billion to $12.2 trillion. But there is a flaw in China's model of growth. Demographic data shows that the country is now facing a severe decline in population. China's fertility rate is dropping and the workforce is shrinking. Demographic data shows that the country is now facing a severe decline in population. China's fertility rate is dropping and the workforce is shrinking. Demographic data shows that the country is now facing a severe decline in population. China's fertility rate is dropping and the workforce is shrinking. For a country whose young workforce is the backbone of its economy, these demographic trends are harbingers of social, economic, and political disaster. For a country whose young workforce is the backbone of its economy, these demographic trends are harbingers of social, economic, and political disaster. For a country whose young workforce is the backbone of its economy, these demographic trends are harbingers of social, economic, and political disaster. During the second half of the 20th century, China's population was growing, averaging at 20% from 1950 to 1978. Policymakers in Beijing to institute population control measures in the 1970s, including the infamous one-child policy. At the same time, improvements in healthcare increased life expectancy across China. The combination of population control and greater life expectancy drove down the fertility rate, or births per woman. For at the same time, improvements in healthcare increased life expectancy across China. The combination of population control and greater life expectancy drove down the fertility rate, or births per woman. For at the same time, improvements in healthcare increased life expectancy across China. The combination of population control and greater life expectancy drove down the fertility rate, or births per woman. For China is aging at a faster rate. The total fertility rate dropped from 6.3 in 1965 to 1.6 in 2017, below the replacement rate of 2.1 children per woman, which is required to maintain population levels. In the last decade, the Ministry of Education closed more than 100,000 primary schools nationwide, an indication that the proportion of the youth is shrinking. But demographic decline is much more than just the closure of schools. China's working population is expected to drop by 9% from 2015 to 2035 and 20% in 2050. That amounts to a total loss of 200 million people. Now, a shrinking workforce is not necessarily a uniquely Chinese problem. Fertility rates have dropped in many advanced economies as their societies have become older and wealthier. Now, a shrinking workforce is not necessarily a uniquely Chinese problem. Fertility rates have dropped in many advanced economies as their societies have become older and wealthier. Now, a shrinking workforce is not necessarily a uniquely Chinese problem. Fertility rates have dropped in many advanced economies as their societies have become older and wealthier.
Welcome to roll call part number 6. If you're watching part number 6, you should have been with us from part number 1 till part number 5, and now we're on part number 6. And so far we've reached the point in the video in which you need a pen and a paper. If you didn't pick up your pen and paper before now is the time to, because from here on out you need to write out what we tell you so you do remember it and you will never forget. So, why are we here right now on part number 6 of roll call? It's because everything that we've done from part number 1 up to part number 5 was to lay the foundation for what we're going to be talking about in part number 6. Now, for you to understand roll call, the reason for this roll call series, because the roll call series is a part of a continuing series of the myth of whiteness, all right? Intelligence, part number 16. So you can get on YouTube and look for the myth of whiteness. We have a specific playlist for the myth of whiteness. But from the part number 16 of the myth of whiteness, it's a total different ball game. So you need to watch the part 1 and part 2 of the myth of whiteness, part number 16 on YouTube, for you to understand everything that we're saying on roll call, because this is a continuation of that particular series. So there is a very big problem that we have in our world today, and the wicked medical system doesn't want to address it. They do address it, but they address it in a very sly manner. And because the people that is being addressed to are not able to think because they are genetically dumb, which the wicked medical system run by Satan doesn't let the world know, the people that it addresses in a sly manner don't get the message. Now, the problem that the wicked medical system is trying to address, which it hasn't come out to say, because this sickness or disease per se is being celebrated, but it's causing such a horrendous amount of harm to humanity than every other sickness and disease and wars that has been ravaging humanity right from inception. This disease and sickness is called albinism. Albinism is the reason why the world is the way it is today in all its organisms and including humanity. The sickness is having straight hair. This sickness that's affecting humanity in such a scale that cannot be put together. It causes infertility, it causes autism, it causes ADHD, and a host of other conditions which are celebrated instead of being treated as a sickness and the disease that it is called albinism. Albinism in human beings, which means having straight hair and having no carbon, which is falsely called melanin and melatonin, in the brain, central nervous system, body, and skin, which is celebrated by all of humanity. Instead of being treated as a disease, the lack of carbon in the body, which is called whiteness, because there is no such word. White is not a color. White is an absence of all color. The word white is used to refer to people who have a lack of carbon. It was falsely constructed instead of labeling it as albinism. The families who run the world, the satanic system who run the world, coined a name for it and called it white. Today, this sickness is threatening the whole of humanity because humanity, instead of trying to look at it as a sickness and a disease, embrace it and also seek to be albinic, which is killing humanity. So that is why we're here right now, and we want to make you understand this fully, that if you have straight hair, that you are suffering from a genetic sickness that's called albinism, which has been falsely called whiteness or being white. And this goes across every ethnicity in the world today. If your hair is not woolly, like the hair of West Africans, if you have mixed hair or straight hair, I want you to understand that you're genetically sick. You have a lack of carbon in your body, which is a requirement for every living organism to have to be able to live in this world. This sickness is causing so many conditions which the wicked medical system hides, and does not show to humanity that is actually suffering from a sickness, which the cure can only be cured in the next generation of an albino by procreating with a black person and telling the children born out of that union that they should also procreate with another black person, so that all traces of this sickness called albinism will be removed in 2 generations. Otherwise, what is happening, as you have heard at the beginning of this video, is happening in China, is happening all across the world in all Western societies. So let's get into this now. So the web page you're looking at is actually a web page which is dealing with infertility in China or other Oriental states. Now, what the wicked medical system of the world does is that it hides this information from the public, because white supremacy, or albinic supremacy, let's put it right, albinic supremacy needs to be input in the minds of all humanity to believe in the false standard of albinos being the standard of humanity. So they do not make people to understand, especially the albinic community, that they have a very serious genetic sickness, because they need to be used as the face to run wickedness upon humanity. Because when you have albinism, you have a genetic abnormality which causes you not to fire impulses correctly. So the only thing that you adhere to, because your body system does not have enough impulses or ability to fire enough impulses so that it can think for itself, is to adhere to instructions. And because of the adherence to instructions, anybody with straight hair becomes a tool of wickedness against the human race. And without the knowledge of the Creator, people who have albinism, without the knowledge of the Creator, people who have albinism become tools of Satan, because all they do is follow instructions, because they believe that the law is just and right. And everybody now goes under the bus and suffers accordingly. And because the world has been made to look up to albinism, even black people now follow instructions because they think it is just and due, because the albinos, anybody with straight hair, who has been made to be the standard of society, the standard for everybody to look up to behave and to think likewise, they follow suit and become as wicked as Satan wants them to be, programmed into their minds because of the belief in the albinic supremacy of mankind.
Taking her to the I just get so Mr. Funk Master, yo be that's who made taking her to the I just get so Mr. Funk Master, yo be that's who many you know. yo, be on. There's too many. And taking her to the. I just kept some Mr. Funk Master. Yo, be on. There's too many, you know. There's too many, you know. And taking her to the. I just kept some Mr. Funk Master. Yo, there's too many, you know. And taking her to the. I just kept some Mr. Funk Master. Yo, there's too many, you know.
What is the reason, what is the purpose for the albinic communities of this world? A lot of people do not understand that the only reason for the albinic ethnicity stems from a problem that the families who run the world had during the time before 1582 AD. Now, before that time period, let's say a time period of between the year the 1400s to 1582 AD, the families who run the world had a problem with the Mongol hordes, which they used under Genghis Khan to help them in so many wars. So what happened was that during this time period, the Mongol hordes were primarily black people with woolly hair. So that's why, for example, if you notice in Asia, you'll find out that the statues of Buddha have woolly hair, have cornrows, which shows you that they were genuinely black people, because if they were worshiping Buddha as a black man, it means that people in Asia were black. But since the traditional culture of Asians supports inbreeding, all right, that means procreating with members of the nuclear family, as this traditional culture was being practiced throughout the whole entire region of Asia, including the subcontinent of India, Iran, and Iraq, which was known as Northern India in ancient times. This produced several straight-haired albinic babies. Now, these albinic babies were not considered to be fit for rulership because of their genetic indisposition, because as we know, anybody with straight hair is genetically weak. They have shorter limbs and longer torsos and are not fit for the gruesome work of leadership that was required for everybody who was a leader way back in the day to be physically fit. So these albinic children were now considered to be the wrong of society in the caste system that was practiced in Asia because of the culture of inbreeding, of being able to procreate with siblings, cousins, and members of the nuclear family. Now, this created some sort of friction between the fact that the albinic people that were being produced out of these black people inbreeding amongst themselves were not fit to be ruling. So because the families that run the world wanted to remove the black leadership of Asia because they were becoming a problem for them, so what they did was to now support these disgruntled members of the Asian communities and ethnicities and societies, which were straight-haired people. So at first, they did not directly support them and say, okay, we want to support you just because that you are an albino, right? You have straight hair. They did not do that. Rather, they gathered people who were disgruntled with the black leadership of Asia around these albinic leaders that they made. So when that happened, this caused a war. So this war ravaged a lot of the Mongols and removed the black leadership of Asia, which had woolly hair. Now, after this had happened, since the new people who were now leaders were albinos, everybody now started to seek to be an albino. And then black people were now made to be the lower rung of society because the people in leadership were now albinos. And so because of that, as is practiced today throughout the whole entire world, all right? Because when you have albinic people in leadership positions, the people who are the lower rung of society seek to be albinos. So that's what happened in Asia. And so many black people in Asia, especially where it started, all in the Mongols and Oriental societies of like Japan, China, and Korea, and all those Oriental states, black people started to be targeted. And so because of that, in order to elevate themselves in society, black people now sought marriages with people who had straight hair. And that's how the caste system was reversed, from making albinos who were physically weak, genetically weak, as we can see every day, to be the people that you now look up to in society. And so black people, in order to avoid the harsh caste system which was reversed, they married and procreated with more albino people. And that's how Asia today, there's no trace of black people except imports from Africa in there. So when this happened, this got promoted throughout the whole continent of Asia into India, Iran, and Iraq. So the families that run the world now had their problem resolved in removing the black leadership that they did not like. And when they saw that this was a perfect system, they decided to use the albino ethnicities to take over all the identities of those black royalties in Asia. And when this happened, that they now use the albinic population to take over the identities of those black royalties, they decided to do this for everybody else in the world who was their enemy. So today, albinos, anybody with straight hair, have stolen the identities of every black person in the world. They claim to be Native Americans. They claim to be Native Indians. They claim to be Europeans. They claim to be South Africans. They claim to be North Africans. They claim to be every identity that they are not, stolen identities, because this is what the albinic population, anybody with straight hair population, was created for by the families who run the world, who created them in the continent of Asia, thereby serving the purposes that they were created for. Without the knowledge of the Creator, without keeping His commandments, the albino will serve the purpose of Satan, which he was created for by the satanic families who run the world today. So, the only reason, because you have to understand this, the families who run the world are Satanists. The only reason for the albinic ethnicity, anybody with straight hair today in this world, is to be used to make humanity believe that it is not black. Because that is what Satan is using to confuse the world from knowing that the Creator created us in His image, which is black with woolly hair. So this is the true story, the reason for the albinic ethnicities. So as long as you have straight hair, that is your purpose in life, to steal the identities of everybody in this world. So for example, right now, albinos claim to be Jews. They claim to be every identity under the sun when they were not, because that was their purpose. So as long as the albino does not believe in the Creator, we're not talking about Jesus, God, Lord, the Most High, Yehoshua, Yahushua, Yah, Jah, all those names which are fake. If they do not follow after the commandments of the Creator, they are serving the purposes of Satan, which is to make the world believe that it was not created in the image of the Creator, black with woolly hair. So as long as you are practicing albinism in your ego, you are serving that purpose. And how is this possible? Because as an albino, you are genetically sick. You don't have enough impulses to be able to think, so you are only following instructions. So whatever the community or whatever is passed down from the hierarchy, whatsoever they tell you is what you will do, because you are genetically sick, but they do not tell you so. When someone is sick,
all they do is follow instructions. So for example, if you're sick and you go to a hospital, the doctor will tell you do this and do that and do that and do that and do that for you to be well. And that is what you'll do. And that is what albinos do. They cannot think for themselves because they are genetically sick. So whatsoever instructions is passed down, or whatsoever the law and order of the day tell them to do, that is exactly what they'll do because they are genetically sick. Someone who is sick does not have a mind of their own to be able to think for themselves. This is the state of everybody who has straight hair in this world today, an albino. But they won't tell you so. Why? Because a doctor will always tell you to get well. So you'll do everything. You do the law, you follow the law and instructions to be well. This is the state of the albino, anybody with straight hair. That is the reason for the albinic communities, anybody with straight hair ethnicities in the world. What you're seeing on the screen here is a website which is studying the fact that the Chinese population is dwindling at a very fast rate. Not just the Chinese population, but every population in the world which is albinic, anybody with straight hair, is dwindling at a very fast rate. But instead of telling the public the truth, the reason why the albinic population is dwindling so much, the wicked medical system hides it. And it does show, it does tell the albinic population in a very sly manner what they ought to do to cure this sickness. But it's not bold enough to tell them as we are telling you right now. Because the world needs to believe in albinic supremacy until the families of the world, which run the whole entire system of this world from top to bottom, including the government, has perfected the artificial intelligence chip and has socially engineered the public enough to accept one, then they can now boldly say that albinism is actually a sickness and a disease. But for now, they're doing it in a sly manner, which we'll show you as we progress in the video. But for now, let's start reading here the infertility problem that's affecting China, and especially everybody who is albinic in the world, because China is just a case study. All right, so we read here, it says, infertility is a major life problem for many couples and probably one of the unfavorable issues affecting 1 in 6 couples. Now, that term right there, 1 in 6 couples, is actually a very false statement, because right there and then, the Vatican Code of Numbers, which is used to tell lies, is imputed 1 in 6. Because remember, if you've been with us up till now, you'll understand that multiples of 3 is used in the worship of Satan, the Trinity, because Satan is known as the Trinity in these last days. And the Trinity here, we're talking about Jupiter, Juno, and Minerva, which are known as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So everything that the government and the wicked medical system do in this world must be in worship of the Trinity. So that's why, for example, you have 23 chromosomes in the body, and 23 chromosomes does not exist in reality. As we did show you earlier, that DNA does not exist in the part 5 of roll call. So this statement here is very false, because the actual truth is that it affects 70% of all albinic populations in the world. And we'll get into all that later so you understand, but let's keep on reading. It says here, infertility is a major life problem for many couples and probably one of the unfavorable issues affecting 1 in 6 couples in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is just a case study. That means is affecting the general albinic population worldwide, wherever you are, whether you know yourselves as Mexicans, as native Indians, as American, South Americans, or European or North African. It's affecting all those so-called ethnicities, which are actually false identities of anybody who's an albino today. Because as we explained earlier, if you have straight hair, your origin, your lineage, your genealogy is in Iran and Iraq, which was known as Northern India in ancient times, in India itself as the nation, country, or continent, and in Asia in any of the Oriental states of China, Japan, and all the Asian states. Let's continue reading. It says, healthcare professionals generally consider infertility as a medical problem with psychological consequences rather than a socio-cultural constructed issue. So you can see right here, it says psychological. That means is affecting the central nervous system and brain. Okay? Psychology. It says consequences rather than a socio-cultural constructed issue. So when the albinic population, all right, when the families who run the world want to tell you lies, they use ambiguous words so that somebody reading this and just taking the words for what it says will not see what the actual intention is, because they are the ones who want to understand only what they are reading. So continuing on, it says, however, the emotional effect of infertility, creating problems for infertile couples and tormenting the affected family and society, cannot be ruled out. So that is the basis of what we're going to be talking about today, for you to understand that if you have straight hair or mixed hair and you label yourself as being any of the so-called false demographic of the human race as being white or anything other than being black, which means that you have woolly hair, you are suffering from a sickness and a disease. And the only cure that you can get for that sickness, you won't be able to cure it for yourself, but you can cure it for the next generation of you that will be born of you by procreating with a black person. That is your only cure. Let's continue on. So next on our presidential check is President Ronald Reagan. President Ronald Reagan was known for this very popular speech in which she, because it's actually a she, said, President Gorbachev, tear down this world during the end of the purported Cold War way back in the 1980s. Today, that Cold War again has been revived with Russia, because the Satanists, the government of this world, always want to rule you through fear. So for example, in the United States of America and all around the world, free speech is attacked. So as we're speaking freely here, it is meant to be a crime that you cannot go against what is called political correctness. Once you go against that, then it becomes a crime. So the government expects us to be upstanding citizens of society. Even right now, as we are executing our duties as being upstanding citizens of society by calling out the people who are pretending to be not what they are, the government through YouTube will shut down this video. But yet, they still tell you to be upstanding citizens. So which one is it? Alright, let's take a look. So first of all, the picture that you're looking at of President Ronald Reagan, this picture has been photoshopped to hide the curves of this imposter in the White House, to which the judicial system has done nothing about. The so-called great policemen of this world, especially in the United States, who are busy writing tickets for everybody, none of them have made an attempt to go arrest an imposter in Ronald Reagan. We never heard of it. So the picture that you're looking at actually is Photoshop, but if you take a good look at this picture, you'll notice something very, very strange about Ronald Reagan's shorts. First of all, the position of his crutch and the way the appendage here is hanging is totally wrong for it to be in that position for a man. If you notice the side of this picture is from right up here, the line here is way too straight because it's been photoshopped, and even the area around like the swimming pool that she's supposed to be at is all whited out because it's photoshopped. When you go further down here, you see this particular dip right here in this pelvic location. That's also photoshopped as well, to hide the fact that this is around the pelvis of a female that Ronald Reagan has. But what you will take notice of is that no matter how they're photoshopped, you will notice that right here is where the Q angle starts. Let's blow this up so you can see this a little bit more clearly. Right here is where the Q angle of Ronald Reagan starts. That's the end of the pelvis. And this pelvis is way too long for it to be male, because Ronald Reagan is 100% female. A United States president in the White House is a woman. And we've never been told this, not in a whisper, by the so many celebrities. Now remember this, Ronald Reagan was a governor of the state of California. It was also noted that Ronald Reagan was an actor before she became the governor and then the president of the United States. Now Hollywood did not even remotely mention the fact that Ronald Reagan was a female posturing as a man, and she went all the way up to the White House, and none of the so-called committees who are supposed to be pulling out dirt in the so-called elections that you guys always get to hear about. You always hear like the Republicans and the Democrats pulling out dirt on one another. None of them mentioned the fact that Ronald Reagan was a female. So what kind of elections do you think you guys go into? Is it real? Or they just count numbers on TV, make you go count your vote, and you actually believe that your vote counts? Because it looks like that's what it is. Here's another picture of Ronald Reagan, and in this one is the same exact thing. The torso of Ronald Reagan is way too long because all right from this area is all pelvis. So the specially constructed shorts or pants that she's wearing is meant to hide the female form. But when you go further downwards, as we want to show you in this picture, let's blow it up, you will notice that the Q angle of Ronald Reagan is below the crotch. It didn't start up here because you can notice that it gets wider. This pelvis gets wider, 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 and when it ends is right here. Don't worry about what's going on right here at the center, trying to fake the male appendage. It's all trying to distort the fact that Ronald Reagan's wide pelvis ends right around here, where the Q angle, the angle between the hip and the knee, starts, which is very, very acute for Ronald Reagan, because Ronald Reagan is 100% female. The distance of this pelvis is way too long. See, this is where it ends, and that's where the Q angle starts. It's way too long for it to be male because males have a very short pelvis. So if this was man, the Q angle wouldn't start here, as you can notice right here. This is a cute Q angle below the crotch. It would have started right around up here. All right, and the Q angle would just slant inwards. But this is not the case. As you can notice, it gets wider. Follow my mouse. Wider, wider, wider. And it ends here. That's where the Q angle starts, below the crotch. Because Ronald Reagan is 100% female. A United States president. So, what kind of country are we being run by? Where are all these laws that choke the right to free speech, choke the right for you getting paid correctly for what's your due? They heap taxes upon you and all sorts of crazy laws in the name of trying to protect you. And yet you have an imposter in the White House, and none of the political machinery, none of the judicial machinery, none of the Supreme Court justices ever mentioned the fact. None of the celebrities who met with Ronald Reagan during his time, or who met with him while she was an actor, because it's actually a she, ever mentioned the fact that Ronald Reagan was a woman. Now here's Ronald Reagan with his wife, the so-called Nancy Reagan. So, during this particular point in time, you had lesbians in the White House. So, can you guys start to see how corrupt the United States is? And these are the people that you were supposed to look up to. And they never mentioned the fact to you that they had homosexuals in the White House. And Ronald Reagan was busy all over the place making policies. Was Ronald Reagan actually running the country? Because if you are a transgender, as most transgenders are today, we are so fixated with the fact of trying to stay in a gender that they're not. Their minds are fully functioning to make themselves believe that they are in a gender that they were not born with. They don't have time to think about anything else. So how could Ronald Reagan have run the United States in this state? Well, the thing that you should notice about this picture first and foremost is that, as usual, if you look at Ronald Reagan's chest, you will notice that they are not symmetrical as a male's chest should be. Take a good look at the chest. One chest looks like it's bigger than the other just by looking at the chest. You can see that this chest right here is more pronounced and it looks bigger. Even though this picture is Photoshop, but we can still tell that. The picture is Photoshop because the sides of Ronald Reagan are way too straight. They were trying to make this torso of Ronald Reagan to look like a man. So they photoshopped it, but the lines are way too straight. But what they didn't Photoshop correctly is the arm of Ronald Reagan right here. Because as you can notice, the arm here starts to angle out like a female's arms, which follows the contours of the body. Because Ronald Reagan is 100% female. And you had a homosexual couple in the White House, and nobody ever told you this. I thought in America that we're supposed to be free. Be what you are. Do what you want. Nobody is gonna come after you because it's the land of the free. So if it's the land of the free, why are you hiding the fact that you are a transgender in the White House? Can someone please answer that question for us? It's the land of the free. If you wanted to go to bed with your dog and cat as most people do today, all right, kiss, take a shower with your dogs, do everything with your dogs that they're supposed to do with human beings, but they prefer pets. It's a free world, right? So why you gotta lie about it? Here's Ronald Reagan sitting with Nancy, his so-called wife. I want you to notice how the length of travel from Ronald Reagan in the seat is way too long. This is Ronald Reagan's abdomen, all right? For a woman, that's where her pelvis starts. And look at this crease right here. Follow my mouse. All the way down, all right? It's way too long because it's a female pelvis. And look at the way Ronald Reagan sits. The hips of Ronald Reagan are trying to find space. You can notice from underneath the elbows of Ronald Reagan here, She starts spreading wider and wider and wider and wider, and is sitting just as Nancy Pelosi is sitting. The length of travel of the pelvis is way too long. Even Ronald Reagan's own pelvis is way much longer because Ronald Reagan is 100% female. Look at that. Take a look. Can you see the curves? Can you see the length of travel? The Q angle where it starts? It's below the crotch at this point. It's not above it like a male should be. Because Ronald Reagan here is 100% female. Take a good look. With Nancy in the White House, Nancy Reagan. They never ever mentioned this fact to you, that they had a homosexual couple in the White House. Alright. Take a good look. That's a woman sitting. You can see the leg cross, the exposure of the thigh, the full round thighs of a female. Because most of Ronald Reagan's pictures were photoshopped to hide the femininity that she exuded because she was 100% female. Let's continue on. Now, if you denied any of the pictures that we just showed you, you cannot deny this one. So, I want you guys to do this if you're a woman, alright? I want you to lean yourself into maybe something like a balcony right here, like Ronald Reagan is leaning into. You will notice that when you do that as a woman, your hips even spread wider out. Okay? Because that's what a woman's hips does. Anytime it touches something that it can relax, the full width of the hips now spread wider. And this is what Ronald Reagan is exhibiting here. And you can still see that chest like we told you. It's not symmetrical like a male chest. One chest over here looks like it's far bigger than the other one over here. And look at how Ronald Reagan curves, just like the female that she's with here. And this happens to be a lady called Jane Wyman. It's said to be Ronald Reagan's first wife before she got married to Nancy Reagan. All right? And look at these curves. Can you see? It's the same curves that Ronald Reagan has with an acute Q angle below the crotch. And when you take a good look, right, at Ronald Reagan's crotch right here, it doesn't look like to exist any sort of male appendage. Because Ronald Reagan did not have one. All the photos that you saw, that appendage was fixed. Because right here, it doesn't look like it does exist. This looks like a female crotch area. You can even see that at this picture right here, the pubic arch slants. Is tilted forward. Because that's how a female crotch area looks. Because the pelvis of a woman is tilted forward. So it slants down. And this is what is happening to Ronald Reagan. And you can see the curves and the acute Q angle that's below the crotch. An hourglass figure, just like the female that's with her right here. Because Ronald Reagan is 100% female. The president of the free world, the United States of America. What a country. Now, here is Ronald Reagan with Michael Jackson. You know, a lot of you guys love Michael Jackson. He could do no wrong. He was always talking about truth. He loved the children. He loved, humanity. But Michael Jackson never remotely mentioned the fact that he was parlaying around with an imposter in the White House, Ronald Reagan, a female. Now, one of the things that you have to notice real quick, if you've been with us for a long time, is the way Ronald Reagan walks with Nancy Reagan. As you can notice right here, Nancy Reagan is leaning all the weight of her body into the foot that is in front of her. You can tell by the walk that she's leaning the weight into the foot that's in front of her, because that's what females do. Because of the wider hips, or when a woman walks, she needs to do two things. She doesn't know that she's doing it because she's biologically wired to do so. Her legs need to come into the center of gravity. Remember, when we use the word gravity here, we're not saying gravity per se. Gravity doesn't exist. We're saying center of weight, which is the right way that we should use the word. So when a woman walks, she wants to lean her foot into the center of her weight. So the legs come into the center of the weight. They come forward and inwards at the same time to do that balancing. This is what Nancy Reagan is doing over here. It's the same thing that Ronald Reagan is doing in this walk. You can see both feet. Now with a man leans his weight to the foot that's behind him. All right? Because his pelvis is not wide. He doesn't need to do any sort of weight balancing when he's walking. He just strides. So because of that, the weight goes behind. And this is what Michael Jackson is exhibiting, because as he's putting his foot down here, the weight is distributed to the leg that's behind in the walk. With females, it's distributed to the leg that's in front. This is what Ronald Reagan is doing, just like her so-called wife in Nancy Reagan. But the big question is, why did Michael Jackson never tell you guys that Ronald Reagan was a woman, an imposter in the White House? Because all of the celebrities that you see on TV that you adore, they are affiliated to the families that run the world. And they are all Satanists, just like the families who own all the resources that we use today in today's world, who make men and make women and make everything around you in a false representation to soak the already wicked population who don't care about the Creator, who only care about their belly and their guts. They don't care about His commandments. All they think about is, I'm just doing a job. And they heap more wickedness upon society because nobody is interested in the commandments of the Creator. It's a great, huge conspiracy. So all the celebrities are involved because they're all Satanists. They are all made popular for you to watch by the so-called families who run the world from behind the scenes. They really aren't behind the scenes, but you guys are not interested. So here's Ronald Reagan with George Bush Sr. And during this particular time period, George Bush Sr. was the vice president of the United States. And George Bush Sr. never one day remotely mentioned the fact that he was parlaying around with an imposter in the White House in Ronald Reagan who was female. Never. But a lot of people today look up to George Bush Sr. Why is there such a great conspiracy? Why? Why all the hush hush? Because you are as wicked as they are too. You do not care about the truth. You think you do, but you really don't care. All you care about is how you're going to eat your next meal. That's your priority. And anything that this wicked system tells you to do, because they have made wickedness to be legal, for you to be able to steal money from people legally or force them to give you their money, you will do, because you are just as wicked as they are. Inbreeding produces albinism. And why does it produce albinism? Because when members of the same family or siblings procreate, as father to daughter or mother to son or siblings or first cousins to second cousins, what happens is that you're drawing from the same genetic material. You're producing an identical copy of yourself. And because of that, there's a destruction of the protein, which is produced from carbon. Because a lot of people don't know that proteins are produced from carbon. And let's show you that first before we continue. So here's a picture of what we're trying to show you. Now, you have to understand this. We are made of protein. Protein stores all the information that a body needs to survive on. So that's why, for example, you can survive without carbohydrates, but you cannot survive for protein for way too long. because protein is readily consumed in the body and turned to transmit all the information that your body needs. So when members of the same family procreate, this carbon bond, because you have to understand we are all carbon-based structures or carbon-based organisms. When members of the same family procreate, they are drawing from the same pool of information, the same protein information, and that protein information is destroyed because the carbon connections inside the protein, as you can see right here, this is a protein chain that you're looking at, gets destroyed because it keeps on recreating its own self, an identical copy. So everybody today who has straight hair, they are genetically belonging to the same nuclear family all around the world, from Asia to India, the whole continent of Asia, down to North Africa and Europe, to North America, the United States and Canada, Mexico, South America, the Caribbean. They are members of the same nuclear family. Their lineages are not that far apart from each other. So every time they procreate, this protein information which is stored, all right, by the carbon gets destroyed. So the body does not know how to function properly. It doesn't know how and what to do with the organs, the central nervous system, the brain, the eyes, the ears, everything gets affected, down to the hair. That's why albinos have such scanty hair. But if you notice the hair of black people, it's full because they have so many strands of hair. We already talked about that in the part 1 of Roll Call. You can go back and watch that. So looking at this screen right here, you can see that this is a protein chain. When you hear this word peptide bonds, it's just talking about protein. So go take a look on the internet, on your search engine, and look at what a protein chain or element looks like. Now you can notice that right here at the center of the chain, you have carbon connections because it's the carbon that connects everything. The carbon connects every element in the periodic table. So if you take up any element in this world, or let's say anything at all, be it be a living thing or a non-living thing, when you break it down at its core, what you have are carbon elements. The carbon keeps and binds everything together. So if the chains of carbon, which are stored in protein, and the female egg is made of protein, just like the male sperm is made of protein, there's a destruction in those carbon elements when members of the same family procreate. And because the protein store all the information, it is destroyed. And that makes albino children come out having long torsos, all right, because the carbon chains have been destroyed. They have shorter limbs, they are infertile, they have autism, they have ADHD, and a host of other diseases and sicknesses, genetic sicknesses. And most especially, they come out genetically dumb. The only thing they can understand is law and order and instructions, because they do not have enough impulses, because they do not have enough carbon that was destroyed because their families were inbreeding. I hope you guys understand that. So inbreeding produces albinism, and albinism affects everything in the world. Now you might be wondering, what are you looking on the screen right now? Looking at a lion poaching a herd of elephants. So let's break down this picture for you. In most cases, when you get to, let's say, a safari, or let's say you go to the wild, you will notice that you'll find out that the animals which are darker in complexion, there seems to be a whole herd of them. So for example, you see maybe in the screen right now, you see just a few lions, 1 or 2, or 3, and you find a whole herd of like buffalo right here running across the wild, or elephants, and you notice that they're all blacker, darker animals. You have a whole herd of them, a whole herd of blacker, darker animals, but here is just one lion. Why is that the case? Now, when you study wildlife, you've heard this when the albinic supremacists tell you on your TV and media. They tell you that wildlife is disappearing at a very fast rate, okay? And it's because of climate change. There is no such thing as climate change, because none of us have lived long enough to see what the weather looked like about 400 or 200 years ago. There was no recording for that. Anything about climate change just happened in the last 50 years. The so-called recordings. Now, if you notice in this picture, you'll see one lion. And what color is this lion that you're looking at? The lion is pale. The other animals that the lion is poaching, which always seems to be like a whole herd of them, like this buffalo right here. You can see that it's a whole herd of buffaloes that the lion is chasing. Now, guaranteed that the picture is a little bit blurry on my screen, but you guys can still see that 2 or 3 lions here chasing a whole herd of black animals over here. Why is that the case? The reason wildlife is disappearing is not because of poaching, as you've been made to believe by the media, the albinic media that supports albinic supremacy, or white supremacy as you guys know it. It's not because of climate change either. It's because why? Animals are suffering from albinism. The paler animals like the lion are suffering from albinism. And when albinism affects organisms, they cannot produce. They become infertile. So the reason for the less population of lions is because they are suffering from albinism. They are infertile. They'll never tell you this truth. The buffalo that you can see right here, which this lion is actually attacking, there are so many of them, and you can notice that they are dark in complexion. The reason for wildlife disappearing is because the wildlife that's disappearing is suffering from albinism. Albinism causes a whole lot of genetic defects because the animals are genetically sick and they cannot produce enough offspring viable for their population. The colors that you see of these lions right here, this pale looking color, is because as human beings, when they go through albinism, they start off black, all right? Then they go browny, and then they go pale. And this is what is happening to this lion. So every organism that you see today, every animal that you see today that has colors, let's say, for example, you see some white pelican bird, all right? Or you see a parrot with a lot of colors. Or you see fish with so many colors, all right? Like, say, the goldfish. You see them with so many colors, or like the zebra fish, or anything that's not black. It means that they are suffering from albinism. Now, the world might tell you that albinism produces good colors, but it's actually death working in those animals. So let me show you an example so you guys can understand what you're looking at. So here is a picture of a jaguar. You can notice that this jaguar on here has striped dots, and this one is actually black. Now, for any animal today, especially like maybe the zebra, the giraffe, the cheetah, the tiger, which all have stripes and spots, or maybe the hyenas, all right? The reason you see those spots is because those animals are suffering from albinism, and albinism is making their population decline. When you see such animals as the elephants and the buffaloes, you see them in so much herds. All right? The less dark the animal is, you notice that their population gets smaller. So, for example, if you go deer hunting, you see that the population of deer is quite small. Because why? They are going through albinism, and then they'll disappear in the next couple of years. This is what the so-called scientists are hiding from you, because the families of the world who are Satanists want you to believe in albinic supremacy. And this is what is killing the albinic population today, because they've all sucked into the belief that they are actually superior. But let's just pose a question right here. How can albinism be superior if, for example, an albino person marries a black person and they procreate and they bring out a child? Why is the child much more darker in complexion than being an albino? Answer that question. If you truly believe that albinism or that anybody with straight hair is superior to a black person, why do the children come out darker? It's because we were made and created black. So what you're looking at right here on the screen is a jaguar. If you look closely under this jaguar's skin, you will notice that it still carries the spots of this other one right here. That's because the spots are part of the coating of the jaguar. When it goes through albinism, all right, the black melanin content of the body is shedded out. And this is now what you now see, it with the spots. So this is an albino animal suffering from albinism. In the next couple of years, without this animal right here procreating with it and giving it black children, this one will die. And this is what is happening to albinism today, especially the albino women. They are infertile. And most especially because of feminism, which makes all women dumb. The albino women have become the dumbest women in the world. But since the albino woman is genetically dumb, feminism even makes her the dumbest of all creation in the world. Because feminism makes women believe that women are equal to men. And because women are equal to men, the women start acting like men. They start thinking that no one is far deserving of them. So it affects the albinic population more, because even though a black woman might believe in feminism, all right, she is still fertile. But with albinic women, because they do not have enough impulses to think, so they literally think, all right, that women are equal to men. They actually believe it, and they act that way. So at any slightest excuse, because of albinism, which has made them dumb already, they dispose of any man at the slightest whiff. And at the end of the day, they are gonna be loving a pet or an animal over human beings, because they think that no man is deserving of them. They think that diamond and gold comes out from a vagina instead of children. And that is why the albinic population, anybody with straight hair population, keeps on dwindling by the minute. Because when it's coupled with feminism, it produces less children. So albino women, anybody with straight hair, coupled with feminism, produces less children, because already they are infertile. So the population control, which the families of this world, the government, the Satanists, who are planning, the albino women are making it possible. Because they are infertile, then they are not even increasing their chances of having children, because they actually believe in feminism, that the woman is equal to the man. But they've never ever asked this question. If a woman is equal to a man, why is there that when you study your Bible, you notice that a man can be a eunuch, but a woman is never mentioned in that same sentence? Because the truth is this, which a lot of people do not realize. Women were not designed to be eunuchs. They were designed to carry children. It is your purpose, your reason for existence. You will never ever be satisfied as a woman. You will never fulfill your purpose until you carry children. That's the reason why even in today's world, with the albino women or anybody with straight hair women, and women in general all around, even though they have imbibed feminism and no man is worthy of them, you still find them being moms to pets. If not pets, then they become homosexuals. Because at the end of the day, you as a woman were designed for a purpose. That is the reason why a woman is born or conceived with 20 million or more eggs at conception. And a man does not produce sperm in his body until he hits puberty, showing you the purpose of a woman right from the day she's conceived as a woman in her mother's womb, that she was designed to be a woman, designed to carry children, your purpose and reason for existence. So a man does not need to be a father. That's why the Bible says that men can become eunuchs. The truth is this, which a lot of people do not realize. Women need men more than the men need women. But because feminism which preaches the fact that a woman is equal to man, is satanic, is Satan's preaching, because that is not true. A man is far more smarter than a woman because he has a larger brain which is wired to think logically. Now, given the fact that not all men can function this way because there's a whole lot of sissy men, so we're not talking about every man right here, okay? But naturally, a man is wired with a larger brain, with larger cost of processing. So let me give you a typical example right here. A woman is like an Intel Celeron processor with one processing core. It's a very small processor. A man is like an i9 Intel processor, which has up to 8 cores and 16 threads of parallel processing running on Windows 10, while a woman is an Intel Celeron with one processing core running on Windows Basic. There's no comparison. But in today's world, because of feminism, which is the preaching of Satan, has made women to think that they are equal to men. How can you be equal? So let's look at a man side by side with a woman. Naturally, a woman's torso is longer than a man. A man's torso is shorter. A longer torso is not designed for strenuous labor. So that's why women have a lot of back issues, because they have been made to believe that they are equal to men. So they go to these heavy lifting jobs and they carry out weights. But since the torso is not designed for that, they have more back pain. Women have shorter limbs than men. Men have longer limbs, which shows you that the reaching capacity of a woman is limited because she was not designed to reach out. It's biological superior construction that the Creator made. So putting a woman side by side, you can see that even in their biology and even in their skeletal structure and frame, that they are not equal. But Satan has made y'all all to believe that you are equal to a man if you're a woman. Feminism. So for example, right now, because of feminism, a woman might call a man a bitch, but we've never seen a man give birth, which is the action of a bitch. But yet men are called bitches, given the fact that some men are sissies, regardless of what I'm saying right now. We're not talking about all men here. But in a general sense, no man is a bitch. But now women call men bitches. Feminism has made women to actually believe that they are independent. Now, let's explain what's the meaning of independence. Independence means that you do not need anything at all from anybody. You can solely do anything that you want for yourself. That is the true definition of independence. But you find so many women today saying that they're independent, but yet you want a relationship. How is that going to work? Do you see where the trouble is? Because feminism makes women to think like men. And do you know who loses at the end of the day? It is never the men. Because as we've explained, a man can be without a woman and will be very, very successful. But a woman from conception was designed to be a mother. So at the end of the day, a woman needs a man more than a man needs a woman, because you were designed for a purpose. So if you keep on thinking in feminism, what's gonna happen is, because feminism is pretty very nice when you're young. When you start getting old, then shit starts to happen. Because why? You find yourself alone. You're either gonna be loving up on a pet and giving all the affection and abusing that pet, because pets were not designed to be indoors. They were designed to be in the wild. But now you've taken the pets inside the houses because of feminism, which has made women not to be women. They think that diamond and gold comes out of the vagina instead of babies. And because they think no man is worthy of them. Do you see how stupid y'all have become? Alright, let's continue on with this lion things to show you that inbreeding is affecting the wildlife of the world. And the satanic government refuses to tell you the truth, but rather blames it on a hoax of climate change, all right, that's going on around the world, and says that humans are the problem, because that is the final say on climate change. Humans need to be controlled because they are destroying the environment. Meanwhile, take a look at the companies who are actually destroying the environment. It's not the people who own the companies. The government owns all the companies. They are the ones who pay people to do all what they're doing. Destruction of the environment. But now they say that you are the problem. Can you see how stupid y'all have become? Because you cannot reason and think, because the Bible says that the fear of the Creator is the beginning of wisdom. Did you ever read that? If you do not keep the commandments of the Creator, you become foolish and stupid. Let's continue on. So we're reading from a website here which says that the population of lions are on a decline, just to show you how the so-called albinic, organizations lie to you, which are controlled by Satan. Because as we've explained, the reason for the dwindling wildlife is not because of climate change, is not because of human poaching, is because most animals are suffering from albinism today. Case in point in the lion populations. All right, they're going through albinism. That is why the color of a lion is brown. Okay, it's supposed to be black. If you go to a store, all right, and you see a fish that's colored one way or the other, it's because most of those fishes are going through albinism. That is why their populations is dwindling. The blacker the fish, the more populations that you find. Just like the blacker the animals, the more of their populations you find. Same with human beings. The blacker the population, the more of them you find. Because at the end of the day, black people make up 85% of the world population today. In North America, in which the census makes black people to believe that they are a minority. In North America, in the United States and Canada, there are more black people than albinos, anybody with straight hair in these countries. But because the wicked satanic system represents albinos in your magazines, your TVs, your ads, and whatsoever that they label, you actually believe that there are more albinos, anybody with straight hair, than black people, which is false. The satanic system hires more albinos. They hire more albinos. So when you walk into an organization, you're going to find more albinos in it than black people. So because of this false representation of society, black people have made to believe that they are a minority. So even when the census count, which is going to start soon, they'll always make sure that they tell black people this message. Make sure that you get counted in your census so that you as a minority will have a say, which is actually false. There are more black people in the world than any albinos. The so-called continents of Asia, all right, and Europe is very, very small. It's a tiny place. Would you believe that the whole of Asia, the whole of the continent of Asia is actually smaller than North America? It's actually smaller. The whole entire continent of Asia. But this is what they'll not show you on your TV set. They blow up the maps and make you believe that you have over 1 billion or trillion people in India and China compared to the rest of the world, when the whole entire continent of Asia is actually smaller than North America. The whole entire continent of Asia is actually smaller than North America by a couple of maybe a few hundred miles. Not so great, but it's actually smaller. Actually smaller than North America, which has the United States and Canada. So how can you have 1 billion or trillion people living over there? Let's just show you an old map so you guys get the picture of what we're saying. Now, this map is not very, very clear because it's not digital, but you can actually make out what we're going to try to show you just by following our mouse. So right here is just the top part of Africa, all right? Just the top part right here. Here is Egypt, and here ends around someplace in like, I think Libya or Morocco, all right? Right at this point. This is just that part, all right? It doesn't reach into any of the interiors of Africa. Now, just this top of Africa, which includes the countries of Egypt, Libya, Algeria, and Morocco. Now, given the fact that this map is very, very old, it's a skewed map as well, because just this top part that you see right here, all right, which includes the countries of Egypt, Libya, Algeria, and Morocco. This part only of Africa is greater and bigger than the whole of Europe and North America combined. It's skewed right here, even in this representation. But in the future, as we continue to make more videos, we will show you the true map of the world so you can actually see what the world really looks like. So this is Asia right here. If you follow my mouse right here, just follow my mouse right here. This is the whole continent of Asia. And this is Saudi Arabia, and this is where India and China is, just this whole area right here. Now, how can this whole area right here, all right, this whole area right here, hold up to 1 billion people? As you've been made to believe every day in the false news that there is 1 billion people living in China and India. This is the whole entire continent of Asia right here, as you can see right here. Just this portion only, the whole entire continent of Asia. And this is almost the same, if not the same, as just this top portion of Africa that they're showing, which only contains Egypt, Libya, and Morocco. Just a very tiny portion. How can there be 1 billion people right here? Because you're being lied to every single day. All right? You're being lied to. So there is more people, black people, in North America than in China and India, because when TV just goes and shows you in one city in India or China, or like maybe they go downtown into a very heavily populated area, they show you that on TV and you actually believe that there is over 1 billion or 2 billion or 3 billion people living in this small area. Look at that. So tiny and so small, if you follow my mouse. So the reason why black people are made to believe that they are a minority in North America is because of TV. In the United States of America, if you go for any job employment, the way it works is this. They're gonna give albino women first work over men. So if you notice in so many organizations today in North America, they give albino women work first. There are so many albino women, anybody with straight hair in any organization, more than the men. That's what they do. The next people that they'll give after they've given the albino women are the albino men work. So when you go into any organization and you look at the people around, that creates a false ideology or false picture in your head that there are more albino people than black people, because in the organizations they are given the jobs first. And meanwhile, these are genetically dumb people who do not qualify for those positions over any black persons. So that's how the false representation is done. So when you watch TV, you see more albino people on the TV. So you actually believe that there is a lot of albino people in the world. When you open your media or you get on social media, because people do not understand that social media is a government construction, you find lots of albino people on social media. Fake accounts created by the government just to give you the idea that there are more albino people, so that black people keep aspiring to be albinic to maintain the albino population, because they are painted as the symbols of success. Dummies, genetically dumb folk. So that is what happens. The false representation is the same thing that the government does in everything. They falsely represent you through their organizations and make you believe that it is you making them to cause these laws or create these laws that happen all around the world, that it is because of you. But it's the government that owns all the organizations. It doesn't matter what name they come in. General Motors, Bank of America, the World Bank, anything at all, the government owns it. Walmart, everything. They falsely represent you there and make the laws to affect you like you were the ones who caused the problem. But the population doesn't care. Why? Because the population is just as wicked as the government. Why are they wicked? Because all they care about is their gut, how to eat and how to survive in this system. Because the government has totally wiped away from their memory how to plant their own crops and grow their own animals and feed themselves. There is no American today who can actually cook a very decent meal. How many Americans can cook a very decent meal and eat? How many Americans can fish and hunt for their food? None. So if all the so-called restaurants shut down right now, how would you survive? How many Americans can wash their own clothes without a washing machine? How many Americans can do that? How many Americans would know the time of the day? All right, this is not just including Americans, everyone in the world. How many of you would know the time of day without your watch? How many of you would know the month that you are in without a calendar? How many of you, if you were put in a forest without a GPS and without a phone, would be able to find their way home without asking anybody any questions? How would you know? Can you see how all dumb you all are? And here we are trying to give you basic information, because when you watch such movies as The Walking Dead, is the system, is the government lying to you, telling you that you are a walking corpse, because you do not know. You do not know anything at all for survival. You can't plant your own food. You can't hunt for your own food. How many people in the world today can create a fire, all right, without a match? How many people can do that? If your government took your cell phones away from you, how would you know where to go? How would you know what month you are in? How would you know your direction? Because people don't even know that the government has, through science, made you believe that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. But is that true at all? You do not care. And every day, the government paints a picture of showing you on your TVs that you are walking dead. That's why the show is called The Walking Dead. Go take a look at how those people live. They had to learn how to what? Plant their own crops, grow their own animals, and how to navigate themselves in the earth. Nobody today knows that, because you have all been conditioned to be dumb animals. And when the government switches off the power, which they do from time to time, you watch on your TV sets and they say there's no power in such and such a community. Those are all practice runs. When the government switches off the power, because you people are all dumb and do not know shit, a lot of you will be begging for that artificial intelligence chip, because you do not have a phone to tell you the time. You do not have the phone to give you a GPS signal so you know where you are, because you don't know where you are without your phone. You do not have the phone to tell you what day it is, what month it is, what year it is. You guys don't know that. There are no restaurants that will be cooking your food because the power is out. So you have to be begging for food, right? You can't wash your own clothes without a washing machine. You can't even cook a decent meal, and you can't light a fire without a match. So by the time the government switches off the power, which they will do, because they do all the practice runs and show you on TV and you guys don't notice that, you will be begging for that artificial intelligence chip, because you are dumb. Not just talking about albinos who are genetically dumb, but the whole entire human population today is being conditioned to be stupid. And they'll beg the government and say, please give me this artificial intelligence chip so I can know where to go, because that is what the government will tell you. The artificial intelligence chip will give you directions on where you want to go, help you to cook your food because you have no knowledge of all this, help you to keep time because you do not know how time is kept. You do not know what year or month you are in because you do not even know anything about time. That is how you'll be begging for the artificial intelligence chip, and you'll receive it. And as the Bible says, when you receive it, you will be doomed. Because when you receive that artificial intelligence chip, you will never be able to take it out. Go watch the movie Matrix. When the artificial intelligence chip found out that it was going to be taken out, what was it doing? It was moving all over the place. And don't be fooled by the movie Matrix, in which it was removed. You'll never be able to remove it, because you can move from your hand to your heart to your lungs. And how are you going to take that out? You'll have to kill yourself. And when you kill yourself, where are you going? You're going to hell in the lake of fire, which is right behind you. So getting back to what we were trying to read before on the lions, for you to see that the lions are suffering and their population is dwindling because they are albinic. So every lion that you see today is an albino. As long as that lion does not have a black coating on itself. Let's show you that picture again so you do have this in your memory. As long as that lion doesn't look like this, it's suffering from albinism. That's why the lion population is dwindling, because albinism breeds infertility. The female lions are unable to produce. It's the same thing that's happening with the albinic population today. Anybody with straight hair, there is a great number of infertile albinic women, coupled with the fact that they actually believe in feminism because they are genetically dumb. The albinic women are the most dumbest creatures in the world. Why is that the case? Let me explain this a little bit further. First of all, a woman has a low level of testosterone in the body. It's generally made that way because the estrogen makes you to look feminine. Now, there's a reason why the Creator made things this way. Because as we've explained earlier, men do not need women as much as women need men. So in order for men, all right, to desire women, the Creator made women to be feminine. So he had to give them a whole lot of estrogen to make them feminine in appearance. So because naturally, a man will not want a woman to look like him, because a man is all masculine, all angular, bony, hard. It's not appealing. So the woman had to be made to look softer. She was given a rounder figure, rounder hips, and because of that, she's given more estrogen than the testosterone, which naturally makes the masculinity to show more. So, naturally, a woman has a lower level of testosterone. A lower level of testosterone means that you're less intelligent. So already the woman is naturally made to be less intelligent than the man. So that's why, for example, in the Bible, when you read it, Satan did not tempt Adam. He tempted Eve. Why? Because Satan knew the construction, the biology of the woman, that the woman is naturally less intelligent than the man. Because the Bible says that Adam was not deceived. Eve was deceived. So in today's world, for example, in today's femininity that is being practiced, you naturally see that women now ask men to be sincere, honest, all right, to them. Those are male terminologies. If you're a man and you require your woman, okay, to be honest and sincere to you, it means that you are not a real man, you're a sissy. Because a real man does not even think about what his woman is doing. Because if you're a real man, just the thought of you alone should be enough for that woman to sit straight all day, every day. So women today require men to be honest and sincere, which are male terminologies. A woman was not supposed to look for an honest and sincere man. You were supposed to find a man who loved and cared for you. A loving, caring man who protects you. Protection here does not just mean protecting you from maybe someone trying to hurt you, but protecting you in the sense that the man financially takes care of his woman, makes sure that her bills are paid and that she's taken care of and she's not worrying about anything. That's what a man ought to do. So if you're not doing that, you're a sissy as a man. So naturally, the woman is made to have less testosterone so that she can be more feminine, and the males will find them attractive, will be attracted to the femininity. All right? So because of that, a woman is less intelligent than a man. So that is why Satan went to Eve, because Satan knew that the construction of the woman is less intelligent. And what did Satan do? Satan deceived Eve. All right? Because of the less intelligence. So in that situation right there, what happened? The woman was in error. She became the one associated with trust issues. Because a woman is naturally less intelligent than a man. When you couple that with feminism, it even makes the woman more dumber. Because feminism makes women to be far more dumber than they naturally should be. Because why? It's given them a false reality that a woman is equal to a man. And at the end of the day, as you get older, you now find out that you have more troubles because now you're alone. And the woman was not created to be alone. And now, by the time you get old, you have found yourself to be far more bitter towards everybody, because the practice of feminism is satanic. You are a practicing Satanist as a woman without knowing that fact. So, coupled with the fact that feminism makes women to be dumb, the albino women become more dumber because already they are genetically dumb. They cannot think for themselves. So they literally believe in what feminism tells them. So feminism makes women to think like men. And men can't get pregnant. And since the albino women are already infertile, they have reduced their chances of actually being able to carry children. And the population of albinos keeps on dwindling. So to close out part number 6 of roll call, we just want to show you so you guys can see right here that Adam was not deceived. When Adam ate of the fruit, he did so because he loved Eve. All right? It says here, and Adam was not deceived, but the woman was deceived and was in the transgression. So it is natural for a woman to be untrustworthy because that is a female biological construction. So today, when feminism makes women to be in charge and has given them this false ideology that they are equal to men, they become practicing Satanists. Because when a woman actually says that she's looking for a sincere, trustworthy man, the problem with trustworthiness comes from the woman. So she's asking the wrong question. What she should be looking for in a man is someone who loves, protects, and cares for her. She should not be seeking trust issues with a man. Men, on the other hand, are supposed to be asking from trust and sincerity from a woman. So that's why the state of the world in the Western world as is being practiced and all over the world today is the way it is. Because women have been given undue positions and status in society. They are now made head of households because they are first given jobs over males. And let me make you guys understand something. A woman can never take care of a man. A woman takes care of babies and children. If a woman takes care of a man, after a while it becomes a problem because it's not her duty to take care of a real man. A real man takes care of a woman, protects and makes sure that she's okay at all times. So naturally, a woman can't do that for too long because women take care of children and babies. So that is why the whole family system is now a broken down unit. Because why? The primary reason is this. You have refused to keep the commandment of the Creator. You are practicing Satanists in so many formats that you do not even know. So the same practice that Satan did in the Garden of Eden is still going on today. Satan has drummed it into every woman's ear through the practice of feminism that they are equal to men. Because Satan knows that women are far less intelligent than men. So the same thing that he did in the Garden of Eden is the same thing that Satan is doing today. Because Satan knows that if the practice of feminism is being preached, all of creation and manhood will be weak. So manhood is attacked. And women do not understand this, that manhood protects, because the job of a man is to protect his woman, to love and care for her. So now the roles have now been reversed. So women are now made leaders of society, especially in the Western world and all around the world as is being preached. And look at what is happening. Because feminism is satanic. Because it has reversed the role in which the Creator had placed on creation that manhood should protect womanhood. And because of that, women today are having a hard time as they get older, because feminism would have made them go through so many men, and all the men would have upped and left because this woman is thinking like a man. You've watched the movie Think Like a Man. They keep preaching that women should think like men instead of thinking like a woman. So this is the reason why albino women are the dumbest women in the world, because already a woman is far less intelligent. Now, coupled with the fact that a woman has less testosterone in the body, albino women have the least amount of testosterone in the body compared to black women. And since they literally believe in the practice of feminism, which is satanic, the population of albinos are dwindling. And if Satan is using albino women to check the population of the world, which he wants to, because the governments of the world want to check the population of the world, they most especially want to make sure that there is a viable albinic population while the black population reduces. Why is that? Because albinism makes the population weak. If you can get more albino people, the weaker the population, because albinism makes you genetically dumb. So the only thing that you follow is instructions and commands, because you know no better to think. And when that happens, there is more rigid wickedness in society. So the albino women are actually doing the work of Satan unknowingly through feminism. Why does the government seek to make sure that the population is controlled? Because whatsoever they are doing cannot be checked when there is more population. Because let me explain this for you so you can get a better idea. If you have only 10 people in a city, it is very much easier to control 10 people. If you have any information leaks, then you can know exactly where that leak came from. But when you have 1 billion people, because the government as Satanists have been operating in secret, so every time they have a leak of information of their plans, it's very difficult to track, and they can't get what they're supposed to do done. This is the reason for population control. A smaller population, the more able the government can be able to carry out all its wicked atrocities on humanity secretly, until they would have roped everybody in through social engineering to accept the artificial intelligence chip.